The risks are so great because premature infants are adapted to live in the dark world of the womb. Nevertheless, even these tiniest infants are capable of hearing and seeing, which has forced scientists to change the way they view full-term infants.
Does he have a belly?
In this extraordinary experiment, William Pfeiffer tests a newborn baby's preference for its own mother's voice over other female voices.
Baby's hearing mom's voice right now. Sucking a lot more. Good.
The baby actually sucks longer on the nipple when it hears the voice it recognizes.
Better today? You look so cute. How's that feel?
The baby's reaction indicates that it's actually prepared by biology to respond to its mother while still in the womb.
Hi, honey. Hi, honey.
And then finally, it is ready to develop the abilities that lead to the emergence of the human mind.
We imagine a child in a normal environment, no special toys, no special radios, no television, just a normal environment of people, stones, cups, and pots. Then there is a major change around 2 to 3 months of age. Now the baby doesn't cry as much, starts to babble a lot more, and most important, reacts to surprise because it is now able to recognize that that face, that voice, that posture, that toy, that's unfamiliar. I haven't seen that before. As a matter of fact, that's why you see this smiles to humans around 3 months of age. It's not that babies love human beings so much, it's that at first when they see a strange face, they're not sure that that's a face that they know, and then they assimilate it. They understand, oh, that's a human being. That resembles the face of my mother or my father or my older sibling. And we call that smile the smile of assimilation.
You remember me after all? It's me, Mom.
It's very important to appreciate that the child is learning new information every day because that is the way it is. My lovely analogy is a well-fed seagull on a summer afternoon will just fly around. It has no reason to fly around, but that's the way seagulls are built. Human beings are built to seek new information, to learn from it, to consolidate that knowledge and move on.
Babies, therefore, are biologically programmed to seek new information. But how? How does the brain decide what is interesting and what isn't? By recording its electrical signals, Eric Kurshane is trying to pinpoint how the brain recognizes new information as the baby prepares to learn.
The baby's world is full of things that are changing very rapidly, sights and sounds. And what it has to do is reach out with its sensory system and with its nervous system and grab onto those pieces and try to hold on to them so that it can build a picture that's a continuous picture of things that are happening.
Normally, a baby is bombarded with complicated information. Kurshane's experiment simplifies its world. He explores how a baby's brain reaches out to distinguish between the familiar and the new. His electrodes pick up the brain waves evoked when the baby notices something different, unusual, interesting. In this experimental world, stimulation is reduced to a single simple image, a human face. Kurshane flashes the face again and again until the baby is used to it. Then, suddenly, he changes the face.
We want to see at what age the nervous system is able to make distinctions between things it knows and things it doesn't know. We want to be able to see how infants come to decide what's important. What we're seeing is a process of the nervous system gearing itself up in anticipation that now here is a learning situation. This is new knowledge that might be coming my way.
Infants as young as 3 months old can make these crucial distinctions. In fact, their responses are actually far larger than those evoked in adults.
In children, it's a big response because they have a lot to learn. And they better get it right because it may be important for them later on.
Just bring Andy in here and put him in the infancy.
That same response to new information can be seen not only in brain waves, but in an infant's behavior. Leslie Cohen is trying to discover just how a baby's mind grows. He enters its world through a technique called habituation.
Habituation can be defined formally as a reduction in the infant's responding with repeated presentations of the same object or stimulus. But what that really means is if you show the baby the same thing over and over again, the baby's going to get bored, and he's not going to be interested, and he's not going to look very long at it. The reason the baby is bored is that he's experienced it before. But that in turn means that the baby has remembered something about it. We can exploit the baby's boredom to discover just what it is babies perceive and how that perception changes over age. For example, if we present a very simple stimulus like an angle, we can ask the question, what is it about that angle that a baby really processes?
First, Cohen habituates the baby to the angle. Then he shows it other angles. One is identical to the first. The second is the same angle, but it's turned in a different direction.
A third kind of angle would be one like this. Now, to you and to me, this looks like a very different angle, and it is. But in terms of the direction of each of those lines that makes up the angle, it's the same thing the baby saw before. We've got a horizontal line, and we've got a line going up in this orientation. Well, when we tested infants on this at 6 weeks and at 3 months, we discovered something very exciting. Those babies reacted very differently at the two ages.
The younger infants were bored with the third angle when the lines point the same way. The older infants were bored with equal angles, no matter which way they were turned. In 6 weeks, their minds had gained the ability to grasp the abstract concept of an angle. Then Cohen tested infants using stuffed toys instead of angles to see if they could form concepts of more complicated objects.
If you think about psychological wisdom in the 1950s and 1960s, people were saying that in order to form categories, people had to have language, and they used labels in order to group things together. We and others who studied categorization in infants have shown that's clearly not true, that babies can form them at a very early age. Imagine an infant who could not form some simple concepts and categories. Every time that infant saw a different person from a different point of view, it would be totally different. That baby would not survive in this world. The world would be totally chaotic, and it couldn't learn from experience.
Most babies reach the stage of grasping complicated concepts after 2 or 3 months. But Joy Williamson, a premature baby now 3 months old, is in developmental terms still a newborn.
You earned that. You earned that.
Well, Joy's really done remarkably well. And if we look at her today, she has the function of a normal full-term infant, which is in essence what her corrected age is. I think that we can be very optimistic about a child like this because she's passed a milestone which is really critical.
I'm just going to bring her upright and bend her over a tiny bit.
But of course, she was born prematurely. Premature babies are at risk. The next year is a very telling year.
You can see here she tilts it a little bit to the side, a little bit rolling, and then she brings
After more than 3 months in intensive care, Joy Williamson is going home. But the risks are more serious than possible learning disabilities. She could actually stop breathing while asleep and will spend the next few months being monitored by machine at night.
The first time I held her, and she was hooked up to a monitor, for a while, it took me a long time to take her away from that monitor. I felt like that monitor was going to be able to see and feel the things that I couldn't see and feel within her. I mean, no one ever gave us any percentage of her survival rate or whatever. I'm glad they didn't. But, you know, within yourself, even though you have faith that she's strong and she's going to make it, you still be, you know, wondering what if something happens.
From premature birth to alcohol, many factors put the developing brain at risk. But one scientist is using the whiskers of a mouse to find out how and when the brain's vulnerability ends.
The mouse has 66 whiskers. There are 33 on each side of the upper lip. Normally the whiskers are in this situation. When the animal actively wants to use them, as we would use our hands when we go to an object, it moves them all in concert forward, like this. One could in fact compare these whiskers with as many blind man's sticks that a blind man would use, juggling them all, to find his way in an extended tactile space. Now, each of those whiskers is implanted in a heavily innervated sensor, a sensor connected to the brain.
Each whisker on the mouse's face has an area in the brain called a barrel devoted exclusively to that whisker.
In the microscope, one can actually see the correspondence between the pattern of whiskers on the animal's face and the pattern of barrels in the animal's brain.
On the face, the whiskers line up in neat, clearly distinct rows. In the brain, the same rows are evident in a slightly semicircular pattern.
Now I turn to a mouse from whose face a set of whiskers had been removed at birth. And what we see in this adult mouse brain is, in the place that corresponds to the whiskers removed, barrelless territory.
The missing barrels correspond precisely to the missing whiskers. Removing the whiskers changes the structure of the brain.
When we take an animal between birth and 5 days of age and we make a very small lesion, the barrels that receive the signals from the whiskers that I have taken out, that these barrels are no longer there. So there is a profound upheaval in the brain. If we do the same experiment in an animal that is 6 days old, the brain will not respond at all. The map that is in the brain, the visible map, the barrel ensemble, will remain in place. So that means that the brain is now committed.
Commitment is central to development. As the brain commits itself, it loses flexibility because neurons it is not committed to die off. But in the process, it gains efficiency and stability.